Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Yes, sir. Welcome into the GSMC Basketball Podcast right here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Brice Lewis. And guys, you know why we're here. Officially, technically, basketball is back. I say technically because the actual regular season games don't start till the 30th, but we have had our first string of basketball games, competitive games, during the last couple of days in the NBA inside of the bubble, and we've gotten a little insight into how it will look going forward. Obviously, we're going to talk about the games that happened on July 22nd, and we're going to go from there, because we're going to talk about that first opening day of games, of course, but so obviously, as you know, every team is going to have 3 scrimmage games. So they started on Wednesday, and we're going to get into it and break that down on each game, what I saw for each game, any standout performers, anything like that, anything of the sort. Also, you know, we're going to get some other NBA basketball news that's happening around the association, and we're also going to talk about top starting lineups in the bubble. So that's going to probably end our show. Obviously, like I said, outside of the basketball being played, isn't too much news going on. So, you know, I'll definitely try to keep you guys updated whenever anything happens and stay on top of anything when it can. But so, like I said, we're going to jump right into the games. We're going to get into the first game that kick off the scrimmages. The Clippers and Magic. Clippers won 99-90. Obviously, this is the first game since 4 months that has been played. Obviously, you know, the Clippers coming back this season, or this restart, obviously, with their roster fully intact. You know, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, obviously, you know, with the rest of the group. You know, Orlando, a team that currently is in the playoffs right now. And so, for them, you know, they're just trying to hang on to the 8th spot in the Eastern Conference. They're back as well. In this game, I would think, obviously, since you only got 3 scrimmage games for the regular season, you're still going to play your starters. You're not going to play your starters regular season minutes, but you're going to play them more than what you maybe would play them in the preseason, maybe. But obviously, this game only had 10 minutes, so obviously there isn't as many minutes to go around. But in the grand scheme of things, probably at a full 12-minute game, which they're going to start doing the second and third scrimmage games for every team, it'll be more time potentially going to the starters. Obviously, in this game, Lou Williams scored a game-high 22 points. Paul George for the Clippers also had 18 and 5 rebounds, as the Clippers are dominated on the boards and dominated really in the second quarter, 32-16. The Magic chipped off 6 points of their 11-point halftime lead deficit in the third quarter, but obviously Los Angeles was able to outpace them by 4 points in the fourth to secure the win. Kawhi Leonard, Reggie Jackson, and Marcus Morris each had 9 points for the Clippers. They actually had Joe King Noah starting at center because Zubac and Harold are currently not in Orlando, even though they are expected to join the team. And he got 4 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. Obviously, on the Magic side of things, Vucevic led the way for the Magic with 18 points. Obviously, I think everybody knows he's probably their best player. I would think everybody would agree. Vucevic is probably the best player on the Magic. He also had 10 rebounds and 3 assists. Michael Carter-Williams came off the bench with 16 points. Terrence Ross also had 14. Aaron Gordon had 13, 7, and 3 with 1 block. And then the starting backcourt struggled in this game. DJ Augustine and Evan Fournier only mustered 5 points on 0 for 6 shooting. So, listen, tell two teams. Obviously, we know the Clippers are much more supreme and superior to the Orlando Magic. Orlando, like I said, right now, it's just, biding their time, just trying to hang on to their playoff spot so they can at least play a playoff series, play extra 4 games, maybe 5 if they can push it to 5 against Milwaukee. And like I said, not a lot of people are expecting a lot out of the Magic. But at the same time, it's also just great to see basketball again and to see them playing. So that's obviously a really great thing to see and a great sight as well. But the Clippers also look good in this game. The Clippers really just show the depth. And I think that's going to be, I think some people think, one of the biggest reasons. That's the reason why they didn't even increase their roster. They don't have the full 17 because they have so many players they know we can just put in there and play and trust them play a lot of minutes that we needed them to. Where a lot of teams is like after maybe your first 10, those last 5 is like, well, they can play for us, they can give us something good, but we're not necessarily trying to play them too much or give them too many minutes. The Clippers really feel like 1 through 15, if somebody had to give us 25 minutes tonight and produce, we feel like any of all of them could do that in the role that they're given. But going on to the next game, the Nuggets and Wizards. Nuggets won 89-82 to the Wizards. Obviously, the Denver Nuggets started a very weird lineup, a big lineup where they had the Joker, Nikola Jokic, at point guard, basically, at guard, with Jeremy Grant, and they also had the debut of the rookie they drafted, Bobo, out of Oregon. Obviously, he was somebody who had a big game. He was a guy who, had a lot of expectations for him because he had some issues in college, but he's extremely talented, and you were able to see in this game. But to get into the game, basically, for the most part, it was tied 68-68 with 6 minutes remaining, and the Nuggets went on a 21-14 run. So they pretty much were able to come up clutch down the stretch. They shot 44% from the field, 32% from three-point range, while holding the Wizards to 37% shooting. The Nuggets also blocked 7 shots, which I might add, 6 of them came from Bobo. So obviously you can see he's a very dominant rim protector. And that brings up a very interesting point with the Nuggets, because one thing people have said about the Nuggets that has been concerning is even with Joker, he's not really a rim protector. Bobo's a rim protector, and he's athletic. He could really change the game a little bit for them. I'm not saying he'll impact them and then say he'll be the reason why they win a championship, but, this is an interesting lineup. I don't know if they're actually going to stick with this, but obviously they're trying it out. And it may be a lineup you'll see them go to down the stretch, because Joker does have guard-like abilities. But for the most part, Troy Daniels led the Wizards with 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. Joker had 16, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists, even though he had about 6 turnovers. Like I said, Bobo had 13 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 blocks as a starter for them. The Wizards, their rookie, Ra Hashimura, had 18 points and 9 rebounds. Troy Brown had 12 and 6. Ish was the only other player with double figures, with the bench only leading the bench with 10 points. And so both teams are going to be off till Saturday, with the Wizards playing the Clippers and Denver facing the Pelicans. So that was that game. Next game, Pelicans and Nets. This was a beatdown as expected. The Nets have nobody, so you expect most of these games to be beat down for the Nets. The Pelicans won 99-68. The Pelicans pulled ahead late in the first quarter with a 9-point lead and basically just kept that thing all the way through the rest of the game. Rookie guard Nickeil Walker-Alexander for the Pelicans and Equan Moore tallied 14 points apiece. And obviously the Pelicans, we know right now, are without Zion currently, who had to leave the bubble because of an emergency. Brandon Ingram had 12, while Lonzo finished with 8, 3, and 3, and a block. Meanwhile, the Nets, Duzan Musa led the way with 7 points in 27 minutes. Jared Allen had a double-double, 10 and 10, while Chris LeVert had 10 as well. LeVert struggled for the field, only hitting 5 of 18 attempts in 22 minutes. So obviously, listen, we said the Magic. The Nets are truly a team. Honestly, man, it's so funny because they're already in the playoffs. And they would literally have to lose every game, and the Wizards would have to win at least 7 of 8 games for them to actually, not even have a chance to even compete for the 8th spot. we're going to see the Brooklyn either in a play-in game or in the playoffs. And that's going to be crazy. Because it's just like, they're just not, I mean, their top 6 players aren't even playing. Like, it's crazy that they're going to be trying to stick it out. But hey, this is going to be some good minutes for some of the young guys. And maybe they can make an impression on the staff and maybe give them a reason to keep them around next year. Because obviously we know next year is the championship year for Knit Brooklyn. But the Nets will take on the Spurs in their next scrimmage. And the Pelicans will also square off against the Nuggets in their next scrimmage as well. Next game. Heat and Kings, baby. Heat and Kings. So the Miami Heat defeated the Sacramento Kings 104-98. The Heat got off to a strong start in the game, obviously jumping out to a 27-21 lead. And basically throughout the game, it was just basically a little bit back and forth, but the Heat basically were able to keep the lead all the way through, and they closed things out very effectively. So it was a good game for, I think, the Heat. Obviously, the Heat are another team to me that has a very deep roster. And, Duncan Robinson led the way with 18 points, shooting 5 of 8 from 3. Veteran guard Dragic had 11 for Miami. Tyler Hero had 15. Jimmy Butler didn't have a big scoring night, but had a good stat-filling night. 9 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1 steal in just 12 minutes. So obviously they didn't play Jimmy too much. Buddy Hield paced the Kings coming off the bench with 19. Nika Benja had 13. Kent Bazemore had 11. And off the bench, Daquan Jeffries had 12. So, I mean, obviously, as far as we saw in this game, the Heat looked good. The Heat looked like a team who, like I said, is probably a very curious, a dark horse team in the Eastern Conference that a lot of people, I think, would consider as could they maybe make something happen? Could something really big happen with the Miami Heat this season? Because of how they played during the regular season. So, it'll be interesting to see how it all works out from that. And that was your first day roundup from Orlando. And I just want to say, listen, it was just nice seeing basketball. It was just nice seeing it. A couple of things I noticed watching the games. They actually had recorded audio from games from certain teams, and they actually played them. Like in the Heat game, they had a recording of their Heat fans in the stands saying, "Let's go Heat." They've tried to use different sound effects. I don't know if y'all remember that. The yeet sound effect was used when I believe a King, I think, missed a free throw. Or maybe it was a Pelican. So they're using sound effects. Obviously, they used... if you notice, it's very spread out. If you look at the sidelines, they're obviously using social distancing chairs, which I'll get more into detail in the next segment. And, I can see that they're definitely trying something. They're trying to do something a little different. They're trying to, they're trying to do what they need to do to make it work. And that's really all you can ask for from the NBA. What are you giving us that's helping us, do well? And, we'll have to see how it goes. And we'll have to see how it all plays out. But it was just great seeing basketball again. Obviously, you could tell players are working themselves back into shape. Players are working themselves back into playing form. But you saw some good performances out there. Because at the end of the day, the talent is talent. You won't be able to do it if you can. It's just the extenuating of the doing it for multiple days on end. And just, trying to keep up and trying to make sure you stay on top of your game is going to be very important. But, obviously, like I said, it's exciting to see them and see what happens. So, it's definitely going to be fun, at this time as a basketball fan, just to appreciate the game more than anything. So, it's definitely going to be a fun time, I think, with basketball. And hopefully nothing happens and they have to shut down again. But coming up next, we're going to get into day 2, and when this is being recorded, the day 2 games haven't happened, so I'm going to actually give my predictions on day 2 games and my thoughts, plus also other news and notes around the league. So stay tuned for all that and more right here on the podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we broke down day one of NBA scrimmages. I discussed all the games and the performances and the results from the games. So, it was just, like I said, it was nice seeing basketball come back. Had some pretty good games, pretty good performances from a couple players. You could definitely tell, like I said, they're easing their way back into it. They're not forcing it. They're not pushing it too hard. They're just like, all right, let's ease ourselves back into it. Let's ease ourselves back into playing and not, overdo it a little bit. Obviously, you can see minutes were varying on certain teams with certain players as well. So that's also very interesting to look at and see at the end of the day. But obviously this segment, we're going to discuss the 4 games today. By the time this was recorded, the games haven't happened. By the time this drops, the games would have happened. So y'all can maybe make this a game and be like, okay, well, this is who he picked. Did they actually win? So we can make this like a prediction game. So when this actually drops, hopefully I go 4-0, but we'll see. We'll see what my actual stats are when it's all said and done. But we're going to go through the 4 games, and also we're going to talk about other do's and don'ts that are actually happening around the league as well that I want to touch on also during this segment. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and get into it, have a little fun with it, etc., etc. So, at 3 p.m., first game to kick off Thursday's games. It's the San Antonio Spurs and the Milwaukee Bucks. So obviously this is a game where we get to see the return of the Greek Freak in the Milwaukee Bucks. Statistically, one of the most dominant teams in all of the NBA. Going against the San Antonio Spurs led by Greg Popovich, who obviously wondered if he should have came, but ended up coming. Obviously the Spurs are not what they used to be, but they're still very well coached. So obviously if you make mistakes, they will take advantage. I guess I'm going to go with Milwaukee here. I don't think Giannis is going to play too many minutes. I don't think he'll top 20, but I think we'll see some time. I think the thing about it's funny with Giannis is that he usually does a lot of his production in short periods of time. I think the numbers he has, he's not even averaging 35 minutes a game, I don't believe. I don't think he's averaging that many minutes. So he could drop 15, 8, and 7, and then they may have only played him 10 minutes. That could be a whole stat line for some people for a whole game. So, I think Milwaukee's going to pick up the dub here. I think it's just Milwaukee, Milwaukee is still the favorite in the Eastern Conference. And so they're just trying to get themselves back into form so they can be ready to show people why they are the number 1 seed. And also, since there's been a lot of MVP talk since the bubbles began about should it be LeBron, should it be Giannis? And so Giannis also could take this time to sit here and say, you know what? Look what I'm doing. Look how I'm playing. Look the way we're playing. And tell me that I don't deserve the MVP more than the other guy. So definitely, I think Giannis deserves an MVP. In my opinion, even though LeBron is very close second. If they're allowing, because they said that they're judging the regular season MVP based off before the restart. If they had included the restart into it, then maybe we can make the argument if LeBron balls out, then he should get it. But, because remember, when it stopped, he was building momentum to it. But didn't mean that he actually had gotten to that point, even though he does have a lot of vocal supporters. The next game, for the Portland Trail Blazers versus the Indiana Pacers. As far as we know, we don't know if Victor Oladipo will actually suit up, and so on and so forth. So it'll be interesting if he actually does play, because we've been hearing a lot of rumors that he might suit up. And then the Portland Trailblazers, obviously, are coming back with a full roster minus Trevor Ariza. But they're basically coming back with the healthiest roster they've had all season. And they have some depth on this team with a full roster. Obviously, even more depth if Trevor was here, but they'll probably try to figure it out. And basically, I mean, listen, we'll see how Damian, CJ, Nurkic, I think Nurkic isn't going to play too much. Obviously, guys coming back from injuries are more likely not to play as long just because they haven't even played the entire season, like Zach Collins too. But they're going to get some time, maybe 10 to 15 minutes between each player. Damian, I don't see him playing more than maybe 20, 22 minutes. CJ, the same. I mean, Portland, like I said, is the one team that people think that I've been hearing some rumblings. If they get into that 8th spot, out of all the teams, they are the most talented and they have the most stars. Because Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum and Nurkic, they also have probably one of the best rosters matchup wise against the Lakers, because they have a good supplement of big men just like the Lakers do. So from a roster perspective, you could say that would be the best matchup overall for the Lakers if you're looking for a competitive first round matchup between the Lakers and whoever's in the 8th spot. So this would be a good time for the Blazers to kind of get themselves together. Listen, again, they have to work on more chemistry because they have more people coming back, but they definitely have to, if they can get it down, I definitely think Portland could be that team. For sure. But I'm going to go with Portland in this game. I think they'll pick up the W. I think it'll be a close game, though. If Victor Oladipo plays, maybe Indiana, but we don't know. So I'm just going to go with Portland because I know Damian's going to play. I know CJ's going to play. I know they're all going to play. And I think they'll be able to pick up the W at the end of the day. The next matchup, the Dallas Mavericks versus the Los Angeles Lakers. Obviously, 7 o'clock matchup. Obviously, both teams, Lakers, obviously, coming back from a hiatus. A lot of momentum behind LeBron winning an MVP, but a lot of momentum behind the Lakers winning a championship, because they feel like, some people feel like that this restart has given them even a better chance, because it's given LeBron time to rest. It's given AD time to get healthy. And now they can just go full force ahead for 3 months and lead them to a championship. Because people wonder, remember, at the end of the day, regardless of how LeBron looked, people think LeBron's still 33, 34. You know, you can't just overlook that. We don't know where his body was at that point in the season. So now that he's had all this time to rest up, you know, we're basically getting a fresh LeBron for 3 months. And so that could maybe mean that the Lakers are more intimately going to maybe get to the finals. But they're going against the Dallas Mavericks team with Luka, Kristaps Porzingis. They're both healthy. Like I said, Dallas is a team that can shoot the lights out. So, but they're not a good defensive team. So obviously, if Lakers are a good defensive team, so if the Lakers play good defense in this game, then I don't think Dallas can stop them. Even in the regular season games that you've seen previously, that was pretty much how the theme of every game went. They were scoring match and scoring fest. Because like I said, Dallas is a very good offensive team. So it'll be interesting to see them both back on the floor together and seeing how it all turns out and how it all looks when they get back on there. I think that, the Suns and Utah are the last matchup, which we're about to get into. But I think in the Lakers and Dallas Mavericks game, I'm going to go with the Lakers. I think we're gonna have one of those showcase games where LeBron's gonna kind of try to make a couple of big plays, and that AD's gonna try to make a couple of big plays just to set the tone and let people know, like, hey, we're here. Like, we're here now. Like, we're coming for that chip. We're healthy, and I also deserve my MVP. So I think the Lakers are gonna use this as a set the tone kind of statement game. And pick up the W against a game Dallas Mavericks team. And then, like I said, last matchup, 8 o'clock matchup, the Phoenix Suns and the Utah Jazz. Obviously, the Jazz, this is the first game since they actually had their game canceled because they tested Rudy Gobert positive for COVID-19, and obviously we realized the next day Donovan Mitchell had COVID-19, and they think it's because of Rudy Gobert's recklessness and everything. Obviously, we've heard a lot of new things in the news about their relationship, obviously not being the best because of that. So it'll be interesting to actually see them on the floor together. You know what I'm saying? We haven't heard anything negative coming out of Utah camps about them interacting. From what the players are saying, it makes it seem like that they're strictly just doing a complete business relationship, professional relationship. So we maybe not see that their friendship is that great. I mean, listen, we think all these players are on the same team or best friends. You're cool with your teammates, but you're not necessarily BFFs. We don't know what Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert's relationship was before that, and maybe that just made it even more sour. But I think in terms of a business relationship, they're still looking at it like, listen, we're in the playoffs. We're going to go to the playoffs. We still have to play a season together. So we need to kind of keep that behind closed doors and worry about and work together on the floor. Obviously, the Phoenix Suns, a team that a lot of people don't look at as really a legitimate team that can make the actual chip, actually make the actual, playoffs or have a chance to get in there. Obviously, seeing Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton back on the floor together, we'll have to see how it goes. Again, they're maybe they're, I don't know if they're in that Orlando, Brooklyn, where it's like you're just playing to play, but they're on the edge. They're literally on the edge. So, I mean, we'll have to see how it looks for them. But it'll just be nice seeing, obviously them getting some experience, the young guys getting experience on the floor. Kelly Oubre had a good season, even though I think he isn't playing in the restart. And, seeing the other two guys play and seeing how it all works out. So, those are the Thursday games. So, what we have here is now we're going to get into some other news. And this is the news we're going to get into. The Atlanta Hawks have unveiled new jerseys. If you haven't, look up the Twitter or look on their website. And I have to say, I am a big fan of these uniforms. Obviously, me being a Hawks fan, they went back to their vintage red. That it's like the vintage colors that they used to have, but obviously more like, modernized. It looked fantastic. Honestly, I'm extremely happy with what I'm seeing from the Hawks with the uniforms. It's just a nice color shade. Because like I said, they're going back to the old unis. They're having the like a light yellow, a golden yellow with some red. Also the black ones. If you see the black ones, I think they look great. I love the black ones. I think that would be I think they'll probably be our road uni, I think. I think the red ones should be our home uni. I think those look really good as well. I also like the white ones too. I mean, honestly, I think the uniforms are very just... They're on point. They're on point. I definitely think the ones... remember when the Hawks switched to those neon colors? That was ugly. I don't know what they were doing with that. They were trying too hard to be modern. And then I remember this past, and they haven't really gone back to the neon. I really like those Peachtree ones, though, that they have. The Peachtree uniforms. I hope they keep those as an alternative uniform. Definitely hope, because I really like those. That's a good color. If we could keep those four colors, we would probably have one of the four hottest sets of uniforms in the league. To me, like the Peachtree ones and the latest ones we just unveiled, they are quality uniforms. So, and then, a lot of NBA teams haven't really unveiled a lot of uniforms like that. So seeing them is really nice. Hopefully, the Hawks have a thing of going through uniforms a lot over some years, but hopefully they stick to them and they stick to the uniform, because I really, really do like these uniforms and I think they're really good. So that's really, really good. But that's all the time we have for this segment. Coming up next, I said we're going to get into the top starting lineups. Obviously, I'm sure y'all don't want to hear about that. So, but I'm still going to talk about it, but I'm talking about it in our last segment. Next segment, I'm actually going to go in, since again, they're dropping, since we have games also Friday, and this podcast will be dropping on Friday. We're going to get to the Friday games and my predictions on day 3 of the scrimmages. And then other, again, news and notes that are happening around the association. Stay tuned for all that here and more on the podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment we discussed and previewed the games from Thursday. Obviously, by the time this podcast is dropped, the games would have already happened, so this is like almost like a little game for me, where hopefully I can get all 4 right and be a prediction king. If you forgot my predictions, I picked Milwaukee, Portland, the Lakers, and the Jazz to win their respective games. So hopefully, by the time you hear this, and you remember and you look at the results of the games, I'm 4-0. But now we're going to get into the Friday games. So obviously these games wouldn't have happened yet. So I guess this is a true preview of what's going to happen. A true preview of the games. There's only 3 on Friday too. So not too many games to go through. And then after that, we're going to get into some more news and topics that are happening around the association before getting into our last week of the show. So, to go into it, to start it off, obviously, 3:30 game, the Memphis Grizzlies and the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, this game is very intriguing on multiple levels because of the fact that you have the whole Memphis right now. We know their storyline. They're trying to hang on to their 8th spot. So obviously John Morant, Dylan Brooks, Jalen Jackson Jr., all of them need to come together. Got to get back on the same page. Obviously, since they're a younger team, they could have an advantage. Because, young guys, though they play without abandon sometimes. Even though I feel like they did become smarter in terms of basketball players throughout the season through experience. And they're trying to hang on. But it's also going to be, like I said, going to be nice to see John Morant back on the court. And then probably, like I said when I talked about a couple of shows ago, one of the most intriguing teams in all of the entire restart, the Philadelphia 76ers. Because they're a team that had expectations to be, if not the best team in the Eastern Conference, the second best team in the Eastern Conference, and now we're not even sure if that's the case, but they have the talent to be the second best team or the best team in the Eastern Conference. The whole Embiid-Simmons dynamic is very interesting, because obviously there were a lot of reports that if things did not go well in the playoffs, that one of them might have to leave, and it will probably be Embiid. Now, obviously, Brett Brown has talked about some very interesting things. Remember, we saw a big lineup with Denver. He's thinking about maybe putting Ben Simmons at power forward and keeping Al Horford on the bench and then putting in Shake Milton and seeing how that lineup would work, potentially. And I think that would be a very interesting lineup. I definitely think that would be a very interesting lineup. I mean, remember, Ben Simmons is like 6'10", so he's big enough to play these spots. It's not like this guy, isn't. That's why he was so, dynamic in terms of the fact that he's a 6'10" player playing point. So what if they put him at a power forward position, which you can maybe even say is a more slightly natural position just because of body metrics? And how that would work. If we see that, that would be very interesting to see how that works, because if that comes together, maybe that could be a little a secret, a secret cheat code potentially that the 76ers have in their hands. But also just seeing Embiid, seeing how in shape he is. I've talked about it before. it's intriguing to see how in shape Embiid would be. Because obviously that's been something that people have raised as an issue for a long time with him, is that he's never in shape during the season or before the season. He doesn't take working out seriously. And like I said, now with COVID, where either he could either do nothing, which wouldn't probably help with his type of body, or he could be very diligent, stay eating the right foods, working out as much as he possibly could to keep his body in good shape, could be more beneficial to him coming back to the restart. Because now if we get a better in shape Embiid, that could result in more results for the 76ers. So in this game, I think I'm going to go with the 76ers to pick up the win. I think it would be a good start to everything if they could get this win early, just to get some confidence going, especially, again, if they use that lineup they talked about and it gets some success. I think that would be good. Obviously, Memphis needs to use this, like I said, as a game to just see where they are, coming back and work on their games. Because I'm sure they're really just trying to get themselves, like I said, ready, like every team is, for that playoff grind. But especially them, because they're battling 4 other teams for that 8th spot, and they're trying to hang on to it for dear life. So they definitely need this game just to get themselves back to the closest where they were before the season stopped. Next game, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Boston Celtics. Obviously, this is a game probably, to me, could be one of the best, if not the best game of the entire day out of the 3. Obviously, Oklahoma City, obviously the team that surprised everyone, the team that shocked the world, the team that made people say, wow, because they weren't expected to be in this position, and now they're in this position. They're in a position to now be the team that, can make some noise. Listen, nobody's expecting them to be a championship contender, but they're a good team. They reach expectations. They have some good talent. Chris Paul, obviously, a guy who really helped this team, really hit its stride with his leadership. Going against a Boston Celtics team, a lot of people are starting to build the momentum that they could be the team that comes out of the Eastern Conference because of Jason Tatum continues to play at a superstar level. Seeing him come back and seeing where he is right now will be big. Because if Jason Tatum can get back to that superstar level, we sit here and think, why not Boston? Why couldn't it be Boston? They have all the talent in the world. They have 4 guys who can drop 20. Gordon Hayward, Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown, and Tatum. So they have scoring. Obviously, the only issue that you would see is maybe their big men depth, because they don't have any, quote-unquote, I guess, good big men in terms of just like, a scorer in the post. So obviously a lot of the offensive load will be on them. But if they can get just small contributions from everybody else and Marcus Smart, I think that they definitely could be that team that comes out of the Eastern Conference and be the team that everybody thinks that they can be. I think this would be a very good matchup on paper. I think this will be a good gauge to see where both of these teams are at right now. And so, I think it's just going to have to see how it goes, to me. We'll just have to see how it actually ends up going. So, I think that for the most part, when you look at the game, you look at everything that's going on, I think I'm going to go with Boston here. I'm going to go with Boston here. I kind of was like, should I go Oklahoma City? But I think I'm going to go with Boston. I think, like I said, this game is going to be a good gauge to see where they are right now. How close are they to that Boston team before the season stopped? Because if they're clicking on all cylinders, they're definitely going to be a dangerous team. But if something happens, obviously they know what they have to work on. Brad Stevens knows what they need to work on, and they're going to try to work on it so they can make sure that that does not remain an issue moving forward. But I think I'm going to go with Boston here to win this game. And then the Houston Rockets. Okay? So, Houston, obviously is in a situation right now where they don't have Russell because of COVID-19. And so we'll see when he returns. Obviously, James just got there, I believe, early or late last week. Remember, they're the small ball team. They're the team that doesn't really have a big man except Tyson Chandler. So they're small ball lineup. But one thing we can say is we talk about LeBron getting rested. What's one thing that we've criticized James Harden on? Oh, he wasn't rested. Oh, he wasn't in shape. Oh, he burns himself out in the regular season, so he can't stay up in the playoffs. Well, he's had 4 months off. So James should be rested and ready to go. Plus, James has lost some weight. So, listen, if James Harden can be regular season James through the playoffs, Houston's going to be a tough out. A very tough out. And if Russell can get back to being Russell Westbrook, listen, we can sit here and say everything you want about the small ball lineup. If those two players are at the top of their game, they're not going to be easy out for any team. And then on the other side, you have the defending champion Toronto Raptors. Obviously, nobody talks about Toronto, but they have a great GM, great organization, nice coach. You know, they coach well. Nick Nurse gets the best or the most out of his players. They play defense. They score efficiently. I mean, they're a team that has always they just do everything the right way. You know, kind of Spurs-ish. Not by the way that, because they're trying to have this type of offense that's like the Spurs, but just the way the details they handle it. They try to be on top of their P's and Q's all the time. They have a very well put together roster. It fits, all the parts fit. Like I said, at the end of the day with them, the biggest question is just, do they have enough at the end of the day to actually, you know, be able to compete with a top tier team? Like I said, last year they had Kawhi. So with Kawhi there, they could go and, you know, go against those top tier teams and have a guy. Now, we don't necessarily think they have one. Siakam has had a step up this year, but we don't know if he's at that level where Kawhi is. Well, we know he's not at the level where Kawhi is. Well, we trust to think, oh, if he gets in there, he definitely can make a difference. So, I think that's something that is very, you know, interesting. But I think I'm actually going to go with Toronto here just because Houston, I don't know. We'll have to see how it looks. I'm going to go with the team that Toronto seems like more likely a team who can get back to where they were at a quicker pace than Houston. Houston is definitely going to need some games to get where they want to be. Toronto, since the way they're constructed, I think they can do what they want to do because they're going to play good defense regardless, and they're going to try to play efficient offense. And so I think Toronto is going to actually pick up the win in the Friday game. So those are my predictions for the Friday games. But now we're going to get to this last story before we get out of here for this segment, before we get into the last one. So obviously I mentioned earlier about the NBA instituting timeout chairs, obviously to maintain social distancing in games. So now we're going to go a little bit deeper into it to give y'all more information on what's happening, what the procedures behind that is and everything. According to an article from Bleacher Report, the NBA will institute timeout chairs as part of its effort to maintain social distancing whenever possible amid the league restart, which is taking place after a 4-month hiatus because of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to a tweet by Shams Charania of The Athletic, this is what he said. Sources: the NBA has informed teams about them installing timeout chairs during games. They are movable chairs to the court so players and coaches can huddle, but players must sit and stand around chairs apart from the bench. Chairs cleaned by team staff at the end of each time out. So that's what they're mainly there for, to maintain social distancing. They're always clean and still gives them the ability to huddle and talk. Obviously, that would be the big thing there. Obviously, you know, Mike Singer of the Denver Post provided more details on the timeout chair setup, as well as procedures on roster management in a tweet, which I'll read to you guys, and I quote, "Latest NBA memo sent out to teams tonight obtained by these Post Sports reminds teams of procedures for scrimmages and game days. Teams don't need to submit active lists of limited to a preseason game. Benches divided into 3 sections, players, coaches, and unassigned. And there also is assigned seats. Unassigned seats will be for temporary use along baseline, player-to-player communication, trainer to player. 2 additional seats in the lower bowl for attending executives, and every player will have individual water and towel stations behind his seat." Also, he tweeted, "Active players and 4 first-row coaches don't need to wear masks. All remaining personnel does. Masks must be licensed by the NBA. Face masks can't include words, messages, symbols, logos, or promotions. Masks may not be an N95 mask. And lastly, each timeout or stoppage teams will have utilize movable timeout chairs. Players can huddle away from team benches. So that's the update on those timeout chairs and everything around the procedures going into the scrimmages. But that's all we have here for this segment. Coming up next, we're going to get into the top 10. We're going to try to do the top 10 rankings of starting fives during this restart. So if you want to stay tuned for that and more, stay right here on the GSMC Basketball Podcast.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we discussed the Friday games and my preview and predictions, legitimate preview and predictions on those games. And obviously, if you forgot who I picked for those games, I picked the 76ers to win their game, the Celtics to win their game, and the Raptors to beat Houston and win their game. So, obviously, most of the show has been that. Plus, also, I gave some news on the timeout chairs, giving more of an insight on what they're there, their purpose, and everything of that sort. So, obviously, we have all that we talked about last segment. Obviously, this segment, now we're going to go into the top 10 starting lineups coming back from the restart. So, obviously, we're going to discuss the top 10 starting lineups on Bleacher Report. I'm giving my opinion on them. And potentially, maybe one should be higher, anything like that, of that sort. Yeah, this list might surprise you. So, number 10. They have the Denver Nuggets with the 10th best starting lineup. Obviously, the traditional starting lineup we expected before they did the big lineup yesterday was Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, Will Barton, Paul Millsap, and Nikola Jokic. So, obviously, this has been a starting lineup that's been together for about 3 years now. Like I said, some people wonder, is there a legit superstar in this lineup? Jamal Murray definitely has scoring ability and could be a good scoring option. And Joker, obviously, we hope or we think can score, but also can do so many other things for the team. Obviously, we know Joker's an elite passer as well. Now, the starting lineup, obviously, I think could be lower, potentially. Honestly, it depends on how you view Joker, and it depends on how you view Jamal Murray. Because they don't have a superstar, quote unquote, in the lineup. And then some of the teams ranked below them do. So you're just kind of like, wait, so you're saying that their starting lineup is better than their starting lineup? Maybe it's because maybe the chemistry Denver has because they played together so long, so you're giving them that respect. I mean, because honestly, if you think about it, the Denver starting lineup actually has been together more than basically any other starting lineup in this restart. So that should obviously be a big deal for them, maybe because of the fact that, hey, coming back from the restart, we've played together longer than most teams, so we can maybe get back into the flow of things at a quicker and faster pace than other teams can. So that could be behind the thinking of putting them at this spot. At number 9, they have the Utah Jazz. Obviously, Utah, Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, Joe Ingles, Royce O'Neal, and Rudy Gobert are your starting 5. Obviously, you think about that starting 5, you think, okay, Mike Conley, yeah, he's a good guard. Okay, Donovan Mitchell, a star. Rudy Gobert, a defensive shutdown player. Joe Ingles, a 3-point specialist. Royce O'Neal, kind of a gadget guy, kind of a hard worker, put on the hard hat and grind. Like, okay, that's then, Denver's, Utah's one of the best defensive teams usually in the league, and, they added Mike Conley for scoring, and listen, This lineup would be even better if they had their second leading scorer, Bogdanovic. Obviously, he's out with wrist surgery. So, that's obviously a little different. That's the reason why Joe Ingles was inserted into the lineup. But obviously, the good news here is that Ingles is kind of basically Bogdanovic because they're both sharpshooters. And listen, Mitchell obviously has to go out and put out his offensive production that we expect him to be able to put out. Because he has the ability to do it. And we'll have to see it out here. Obviously, O'Neal and Gobert are probably one of the best duos in terms of the defense in the front court. So you can actually make that argument. That's why they're ranked 9th. Because they're probably one of the best defensive lineups in all of the restart. Number 8, the Houston Rockets. Yes, the small ball lineup. Because if you honestly think about it, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, that's 2 superstars. You got Daniel House, who can hit the 3. Robert Covington, who they traded for, who's a good 3-and-D. And PJ Tucker, who's basically their Mr. Do-It-All, defend the best player, hit a couple of threes, and just do a lot of the dirty work. On paper, I can understand why this is 8th. I mean, they've produced some decent results. And obviously, they're getting Aaron Gordon back now that they're healthy, so that's from the bench. But, I can see why this starting lineup could be beneficial for them. Because, like I said, they're a team to me you kind of need to keep an eye on during this. Because they might impress you more and they might do more than what you think they're going to do. So definitely do not sleep on the Houston Rockets in the small ball starting lineup. Especially with all the time they've had to rest up, get back on the same page. You just gotta sit and see all that happens with the lineup. You have to just see how it all works out. Number 7, the Dallas Mavericks. Obviously, their starting lineup consists of Luka Doncic, Seth Curry, Tim Hardaway Jr., Darren Finley-Smith, and Kristaps Porzingis. Obviously, this lineup is probably, when you think about it, you think offense. You think offense. That's what you think. Because they are one of the best offensive lineups in the entire restart. And in the league. Luka can give you 30, 20 any night. Seth could have a big night. We've seen Seth have a big game before. Tim Hardaway, if he gets hot, he can have a big game. Kristaps, we know he can score. So that's what I'm saying. Scoring-wise, definitely. Defensively, not the best. Now, obviously, they lost to Dwight Powell earlier in the season. So that made Kristaps have to go to center. But, listen, that's his natural position. So it's not like this is a crazy thing. You got your elite outshot shooters in Curry and Hardaway. And, Finley-Smith has been known for his defense. So he still gives them a good defensive player in the lineup. And can help with defensive rotations. So we'll have to see what happens. Dallas definitely is a team that is going to definitely be one of the more funner teams to watch during this entire restart. Just because of the way they play basketball. Number 6, the Toronto Raptors. Obviously, Lowry, Van Fleet, OG Anunoby, Siakam, Gasol. Even though the front court the back court may seem a little undersized with Van Fleet starting at the 2, they have championship experience. So, like I said, it depends on how you view Siakam, but Siakam can be viewed as a number 1 option. The team fits together. Everybody knows their role. And literally, they still have Ibaka coming off the bench too. I mean, this lineup, this is a very comparable lineup. A very comparable lineup. We know the Raptors are battle tested. And as a battle-tested team, they are not going to be easy out. They're going to fight, they're going to scratch, and they're going to claw. And so you need to watch out for the Toronto Raptors. Number 5, the Boston Celtics. Obviously, we know Kemba, Jalen, Gordon, and Jason Tatum are 1 through 4, and then you got Daniel Theis at center. Like I said, all 4 of these guys can give you 20 any night. Jason Tatum looks like he could be a superstar. Hayward can score the basketball. Brown can play both ends. Kemba Walker, we know how clutch he can be in clutch situations. This is definitely number 5 might even be too low. I mean, you might have I might have to put him in the top 3 because this is definitely one of the more impressive starting lineups in all of the NBA. You know? Obviously, we know about Kemba Walker, though, and his aggravating knee injury. Obviously, he's had some time, but he still says it's a little sore, so we'll have to see how that affects him during this. But if Kemba can get back to the form that we're used to and he can be the player that we think he can be or know he can be, definitely would be top 3 starting lineup, in my opinion. Number 4, they have the Miami Heat. No offense to Miami, but I would put Boston above the starting lineup, but they have them at number 4. Obviously, their starting lineup is Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler, Miles Leonard, and Bam Adebayo. When you hear it, the only 2 players you think really like, okay, they're really good are Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. We know Kendrick Young broke out. Duncan Robinson's a 3-point expert, and Miles Leonard is a very physical and athletic big man who could also stretch the floor. But also, the starting lineup, based off numbers, has worked this year. It's worked. And so, that's maybe why they're ranked so high on the list, just because of the success they have had together. And if that's the case, I guess you can't dispute that. Number 3, the Milwaukee Bucks. Obviously, Eric Bledsoe, Wesley Matthews, Chris Middleton, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Brook Lopez are your starting lineup. Obviously, this is probably the best offense-defensive starting lineup in a lot of people's minds based off statistics. Obviously, Eric Bledsoe is a little is needing to get back to the team, but outside of that, they have a good starting lineup put together. Obviously, Giannis probably bumps them up very high because of this. They have a good defensive lineup. Brook Lopez can do a lot on the boards. Like I said, they have a good bench. You know, again, understandable why they're in their spot. They're ranked this high. I mean, just because they're also the number 1 seed in the East. You got it. You can't be a lower than top 10, but you're the number 1 seed in the East, which I'll get into actually by the end of this segment because of an interesting nugget that you're going to go see in the next 2. But I definitely agree that, I think they're top 3 just because of what they've done and what they've done together. Number 2 might surprise you. It's actually the Clippers. The Clippers are the number 2 starting lineup. Patrick Beverly, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Marcus Morris Sr., and Zubac. And you would sit here and think, okay, so 2 stars, defensive stopper, Marcus Morris and Zubac's good. They could easily be 1 in a lot of people's mind. So, they're 2. So then who's number 1, you ask? You would think the Lakers, right? No. In this list, and this might make you be like, all right, Bleacher Report has lost all credibility. They say the New Orleans Pelicans. Yep, the New Orleans Pelicans. Obviously, starting lineup, Lonzo, Drew, Brandon Ingram, Zion, and Derek Favors. I mean, in the explanation, they say you shouldn't be surprised. The Pelicans are for real. Holiday's an elite defender. Ball's a good outside shooter and a great assister. Ingram is an all-star. Favors is a defensive anchor. And you have budding superstar Zion Williamson. That's the best lineup. Like I said, I'm sure some of y'all listening to this right now like, wow, the Pelicans? I mean, listen, the Pelicans. How can you not even be in the playoffs currently and be the best starting line? I mean, listen, ain't my opinion. This is their opinion. But they're going with that. I mean, this is a good, I mean, if Zion becomes a superstar, Ingram remains an all-star, Lonzo becomes a star, Drew Holiday is a good two-way player, they could be a top 5 starting lineup. I don't know if they're there particularly right now, but I could see them being in the future. So then you might be asking, well, where's the Lakers? The Lakers are number 11. They had them just outside the top 10. Obviously, their reasoning is because Avery Bradley left. Now, some people may still think you could still put them in the top 10 because they still have LeBron, Anthony Davis, Danny Green. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is not that bad of a player. So, and even 76ers, they're 12th on the list. Some people may even say they should be higher. So that's the list they gave. You definitely can make an argument they could be higher. Those last two, 76ers and Lakers, but that's the list they gave, and that's what they're going with. So, I guess there you go. But that's all we have time here for on the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day once again right here on the podcast. Hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to leave a review, subscribe, or anything on any platform that you're listening to us on. Also, don't forget to listen to our other amazing podcasts here at the GSMC Podcast Network. So, this is Brice signing out. Thank you, and have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.